She said to me she wasn't let go from your firm, but instead she walked.
Well, she was walked out the door, if I can put it that way.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up where I left off from my last video of the Piers Morgan Laura Wray interview. In case you missed it, I recently made a video going over the first half of the interview that mostly covered when Fiona Harvey worked for Laura Wray. I'll leave a link on the outro if you want to check that out. Now I'll cover the second half of the interview on this video that focuses more on the aftermath, what happened after Laura Wray fired Fiona Harvey.
She also claimed that you and your husband Jimmy, who's sadly no longer with us, but he accused you of assaulting your 3-year-old son Frankie, who was born with a rare chromosomal disorder.
Well, that was that was the point at which I thought I can take no more of this.
Okay, so after Fiona was fired by Laura Wray for all kinds of bad behavior and unacceptable conduct in the office, Fiona responds with a revenge plot to run a smear campaign and attack Laura Wray's character. It would be bad enough for her to drag Laura's name through the mud alone, but Fiona is sure to always go the extra mile. She is dedicated to this journey of insanity, and she's not going to let anyone out craze her. She's like the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady of crazy. She's not going to let the average lunatic outwork her. Oh no, when all is said and done, she wants to be the GOAT of crackpots. The crackpot GOAT. So instead of merely spreading rumors about Laura Wray, she's spreading lies that Laura and her husband beat their 3-year-old son. And this is not even the first time that she's done this to someone.
I had heard from a lawyer some months before that who phoned me, who'd taken her on. And he said to me that he was in a terrible state because he'd fired her, and he went home that night to find 2 social workers at his door. The police were involved. It was all taken very seriously, and the accusation was that he'd been abusing his children.
So before her short-lived stint working for Laura Wray, she worked for another attorney who also fired her, likely for the same reasons Laura had to let her go. And so she did the exact same thing, spread lies that the employer who fired her abused their kids, and that time even got the authorities involved. And you know that even later on, if it was proven that he was innocent and that she was lying, there will always be a negative stigma attached to his name that will likely never evade him, even though he did nothing wrong. But yet, many people out there still defend Fiona and make her to be a sympathetic character simply because a few facts in the Baby Reindeer series may have been embellished, even though those story points don't change the heart of the story, that Richard Gadd was relentlessly stalked and harassed by Fiona Harvey. The truth is, Fiona Harvey has proven herself to be very dangerous and needs to be stopped. She either needs to go to jail or be placed in a mental facility. No one should be able to create vile, false accusations against an innocent person that could ruin their life, either professionally or personally. And if you are caught doing this, you should be held accountable. Lock people up. If the law protected the innocent in cases like this, I guarantee there will be a lot fewer false accusations getting tossed around. And anyone who defends Fiona Harvey is part of the problem.
This went to the children's schools and so on. This man was on his knees and really upset. And I said, well, you know, all I could do is perhaps speak to the sort of things she's done to me. So when I was going to go to the bar in 2003, I had to do some exams the year before that. So I went to Strathclyde University. And who's the first person I see when I get to the university to start doing a couple of classes but her? And I couldn't believe it, because at that point it had gone a bit quiet. And there she was. And from then on, she followed me around the university.
So now she's stalking Laura Wray, following her around the university. This was the point of Baby Reindeer. Fiona Harvey is a menace who needs to be removed from society. She scares people, threatens people, stalks people, follows people. That is the reputation she has. So she can't sue Netflix for defamation when the story simply displays what you are, a terrorist.
She would stand right up beside me and so on. So I complained to the professor at the university. And again, stalking wasn't really taken that seriously by people, I think.
And there you go. Stalking was not taken very seriously back then. That is why Fiona was not convicted. Not because she's innocent, but merely because women stalkers are not taken seriously. Had it been a man, it likely would have been taken seriously, in which it should be. But it needs to be taken just as seriously when a woman stalks as well. Psychotic knows no gender, and no one of either gender should ever have to deal with being stalked by anyone else of either gender.
People just assumed, oh, it's two women who just don't get on or something like that. So he said, oh, well, I've checked her records and she's not registered as a student here, so I've got no locus over her. And I said, well, if she's not registered as a student, can you not just throw her out to get the security? And he said, oh, I don't like to do that.
Okay, you hear this BS? Fiona stalks this student on a college campus where she is not even enrolled as a student herself. And when Laura asks the professor to protect her and kick this non-student off campus, the professor just says, no, I don't like to do that. So again, this is why Fiona was never convicted of stalking. Not because she didn't actually stalk, but more because no male authority figures ever took her seriously.
Now, by the end of the university year, I got a letter to say that he apologised because she'd gone on to upset a number of members of staff, harass them and other students.
So Fiona also harassed faculty and other students at the university. Shocker.
So she knew that I'd made a complaint about them. So one day, just after I made the complaint, I go home to find two social workers at my door saying to me, you know, we have some very serious allegations.
So Fiona stalks Laura Wray all over campus, and Laura complains to faculty about it, and so Fiona reciprocates by telling social services that Laura Wray was abusing her son. But no one wants to take it seriously when someone tries to report Fiona's stalking. Therefore, Fiona's excessive harassment and stalking goes unchecked, which is why she has continued to do it on and off for decades. Had the police dealt with her like they should have when harassing Laura Wray back in the late 90s and early 2000s, she never would have had a chance to stalk Richard Gadd in the first place, and there would be no Baby Reindeer series on Netflix. This Baby Reindeer series is an alarm to sound off and bring attention to the fact that stalking is a matter that should be taken seriously before an irreversible crime is committed, and Fiona Harvey should not be able to get away with all she has done to harm people over the years.
So I said to them, well, come in. And I said, before you say anything to me, I said, and I do understand you've got a job to do and it's a very important job. I said, but I want to tell you what I think is going on here. So I explained to them about the other lawyer. I explained to them everything and they confirmed, oh yes, it's a woman who says that she's at university with you. Now, initially she gave a false name of another student, and it wasn't the other student because I contacted the other student.
So the fact that Fiona lied about her name when reporting Laura to social services displays that she is very well aware that what she is doing is wrong, and yet she's doing it anyway. If this were just a byproduct of a mental illness and she wasn't aware she was doing wrong, she wouldn't think to lie about her name because she wouldn't have the capability of distinguishing the difference between right and wrong. But she evidently can, which confirms that she understands exactly what she's doing, and carrying out the scheme is indeed an act of ill will.
But to cut a long story short, she made 5 complaints to the social work department, eventually screaming at them down the phone, demanding that my severely disabled son be taken into care. Now, to my mind, that was the point at which I thought, no, enough is enough. I'm not having this. I'm not having this poor child beleaguered in that way. So I contacted the police. The police didn't do anything.
Okay, so understandably, Laura Wray wants to protect her disabled son from Fiona Harvey. So she contacts the police, and again, the police do nothing. Fiona Harvey's mental instability and irrational grudge is now threatening the safety and well-being of a child. If it were up to Fiona, this child would be taken away from his parents and placed in a foster home. All because she is upset Laura Wray fired her 6 years ago. And law enforcement does nothing. But yet many want to play semantics and claim Fiona Harvey is a sympathetic character because she wasn't technically convicted of stalking like the Martha character on the show was. But yet at the same time, they ignore the fact that Fiona should have been convicted and would have been convicted had law enforcement done their jobs like they should have, instead of sitting on their hands and ignoring what was being reported about Fiona Harvey.
But I was a consultant to Drummond Miller solicitors, and so they did the interim interdict for...
So this is, again, a crucial part of this. And before we get to the interim interdict, I just want to ask you, she said to me she wasn't let go from your firm, but instead she walked.
Well, she was walked out the door, if I can put it that way.
But it certainly wasn't at her volition.
It wasn't at her volition.
Okay, I want you all to pay close attention to this next part of the interview and what Laura Wray says here. So I'm going to let it play uninterrupted for like 3 minutes or so, and then I'll add my thoughts about what she said.
She said she never had any legal proceedings or restraining orders against her. But you say, and you provided documentary evidence of this, that there was an interim interdict against her. Now, just very simply explain what that is.
Well, in Scotland at the time, there was no procedure for harassment type cases. The only thing you could use was this procedure for interdict, which is when you want to try and get the court to stop someone from doing something that you fear they may do. So that's the purpose of an interdict. Now, because often the circumstances can be acute, you can apply for an interim interdict, which means there's an initial hearing before a judge who decides whether, on the basis of the information, it's appropriate to grant what is essentially a restraining order, an interim interdict. So that was granted.
And we've seen the documents to support that, both the claim and the fact that it was granted.
Yeah, so there is an initial writ that sets out all the circumstances on which you're asking the judge to find that, you know, there are grounds for concern here.
Right.
And they're set out.
And it's basically what you've been detailing to me about the consistent, well, the terrible way she behaved in the office, and afterwards even worse, obviously, and then the accusations against you and your husband about your son and so on. And what happened once that interim interdict was issued?
Well, it was served on her by sheriff officers, and then she had...
And again, for viewers who are curious, the Sheriffdom of Glasgow and Strathkelvin at Glasgow, this is the initial writ here, and we've seen the follow-up documentation leading to the granting of the interim interdict.
So I was contacted by the solicitors to say it had been granted by the sheriff and that it was then served upon her, the court order. She then had 21 days in which to put in a notice of intention to defend, which she didn't do. And she then would have had to put in defences. Now, what she says is that there is copy correspondence that I've sent you where she contacted someone at Drummond Miller, one of the more senior partners there, who's now a judge. She contacted him to say that she wasn't going to send him a copy of the defences and she was terribly busy, but she would get them in the next couple of days. She never put in any defences at all. So my solicitors then contacted the court some weeks later, having waited for all the appropriate time periods, and asked if they could, what would happen then. And basically they were told, well, the sheriff doesn't want to grant the permanent interdict against her until there is any further behaviour. So the interdict lasted for a year and a day. And knowing that she doesn't know anything about procedure and wasn't a qualified solicitor, we reckoned that she might not know that it wasn't actually going to be valid a year later. So it was valid for a year and a day. I never heard from her for 22 years, so the interim interdict did what I was hoping it would do. What we had agreed with the solicitors was that if she came back after a year and a day, we would just take out another interim interdict.
You never had to because she disappeared.
I never had to because she disappeared.
Okay, while I do believe Fiona Harvey does have some kind of personality disorder, most likely multiple personality disorders, the fact that Fiona disappeared from Laura Wray's life after Laura filed a restraining order confirms that although Fiona likely has personality disorders, it's not those personality disorders that are driving her to stalk, harass, and threaten people, but that she is in fact aware of what she's doing and is doing so from a dark and evil place within her. She actually is in control of the malicious acts that she's taking out on people. Because if she wasn't in control, then she would not have disappeared from harassing Laura Wray. If it was a personality disorder or a mental illness controlling the things that she was doing, she would not have been capable of stopping like she did. The compulsive behavior would have persisted. She was able to stop the stalking because she was and is cognizant of what she's doing, and she only chose to back off Laura Wray once she realized that there could be consequences for her actions. But when she doesn't feel she would get in any kind of trouble, it's a free-for-all stalking extravaganza.
Do you have any doubt that she is a dangerous stalker?
I have no doubt she's a dangerous stalker, no doubt whatsoever.
Do you think she's capable of violence against you? Is that what worries you?
Well, that is what worries me, yes.
Alright, so that's about it for this video. I plan to make some follow-up videos about Fiona Harvey and this lawsuit with Netflix that I personally think is BS, but we'll see how it goes. If you're interested in watching, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be notified when I upload. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and God bless.
I have no doubt she's a dangerous stalker, no doubt whatsoever.